Hello Horror Hounds, it's time to look at the third of Universal's Kharis mummy movies from 1944, The Mummy's Ghost. And in keeping with the tradition of the naming of the Kharis movies, there's no ghost. Returning from the mummy's tomb is the character of Professor Norman. Remember, the scientist who proved the existence of the living dead with a microscope. He's recounting the events of the previous film to a lecture hall full of 30-year-old students. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, a still dying High Priest Andoheb, still George Zucco, is explaining the history of Anaka, Kharis and the rules of the Tanaleaves to another acolyte, sending him to America to recover Kharis and return the body of Anaka to her rightful resting place. The more things change, the more they stay the same in Mummyland. This new young disciple is called Yusuf Bey, not Cat Stevens, but the great John Carradine, who is a real highlight of this movie. Meanwhile, in America, Professor Norman is trying to decode the hieroglyphics to work out the use of the Tanaleaves, and along the way, he summons Kharis. We're going to have to talk Tanaleaves again briefly, folks. There's yet more Tana ambiguity in this film. Tanambiguity. Now, simply boiling 3 leaves is enough to resurrect, mobilise and summon Kharis. He'll zone in on you as if the Tanaleaves are a homing beacon. I think by this point the script writers are feeling really hamstrung by the ridiculously complex administration of Tanaleaves established in the mummy's hand, and they're just doing the best they can to get it out of the way with as quickly as possible. I don't blame them a jot. So Professor Norman summons Kharis, and this film carries on the grand tradition established in the mummy's tomb of bumping off any Westerners who survived the previous movie. I actually quite like it. It's a nice little touch. Professor Norman's Tanner brewing exploits don't just summon Kharis though. They also lure out in a somnambulistic state a beautiful young woman, a lady called Tamina, who is nominally the girlfriend of one of Professor Norman's students. She's also descended from Egyptian ancestry, don't you know? We know this because the characters insist on mentioning it all the time. Tamina is played by an actress called Ramsey Ames, and I need to get this out of the way so we can continue. She is breathtakingly beautiful. She is one of the highlights of the film, to my mind. It's the reintroduction of the reincarnation theme. You were already way ahead of me, guys, when I told you she was descended from Egyptian ancestry, weren't you? Yes, she is the reincarnation of Princess Anaka, and this does put a little wrinkle in the plan to return Anaka's mummy to her Egyptian tomb. The reincarnation angle can be horrendously overused in these mummy movies, but I'm glad to see Kharis getting a stab at it. It gives Chaney something to work with. He gets to emote in this film as Kharis in ways he was never able to do in the very subpar Mummy's Tomb. There's an amazing scene, possibly the highlight of the movie, where Yusuf Bey brings Kharis to the museum where Anaka's sarcophagus and her mummy are on display. The site of his lost love now exposed for everyone to see, and Kharis shuffles into the mummy room, tentatively approaches Anaka's sarcophagus, reaches down gently to touch her, and suddenly all the wrappings crumble. Her body's disappeared beneath it, and Kharis throws himself into an absolute rage, smashing all the displays, the artifacts. A longing of his that has lasted for millennia has been foiled again, and Kharis truly is the plaything of the gods. In this setting as well, John Carradine is afforded a small speech which gave me a genuine moment of empathy for these poor high priests of this ridiculously poorly administrated sect. bogged down as they are with unclear strictures on the applications of tanner leaves, beholden to a system of revenge that necessitates the reanimation of a 3,000-year-old mummy rather than just shooting interlopers. They're victims of a loony kind of hierarchy that seems to freeze into inaction until a new high priest is appointed, or at least until the old high priest thinks he's dying, reflected in a weird script choice that now sees them as priests of Arkan rather than Karnak, as if a quick change of branding will streamline their operation or make the instruments of Amun-Ra's will less likely to fuck things up by deciding at the 11th hour that they're going to go off script in an attempt to get some rapey immortal kidnapping under their belts. But here in this scene, in the final analysis, they're just trying to keep their ancient dead princess out of the clutches of grave robbers and away from the gawping gaze of lines of museum tourists. But in a deja vu inducing display of the fatal flaw seemingly of all the high priests of Karnak or Arkan, Yusuf Bey fucks up in exactly the same way that his two predecessors did before him. Kharis has brought back the handily fainted Amina to their hideaway in an abandoned mining shack, and Yusuf finally has his prize, the focus of his mission, the reincarnated Anaka, who he merely has to return to Egypt with, Kharis in tow. Job done. Amun-Ra appeased. But wouldn't you know it, he starts getting notions of a different course of action. In this scene we can hear his internal struggle, and it's slightly more persuasive than previous versions of the same fatal weakness. A priest of Arkan falling instantly for the reanimated Princess Anaka is at least a little less ridiculous, a little more believable than a previous high priest of Karnak violating his sacred vows after getting one or two glimpses of some random American woman. Kharis is none too pleased with this change of plan, as you might imagine. Remember, it was 3,000 years ago that he called dibs on Anaka, and the proposed violation of the woman he's been decreed to guard for all eternity does not go down well. He teaches Yusuf to fly, albeit very briefly, when he forearms him out of the window of the mining shack that they're in. Then Kharis absconds with the again handily fainted Amina/Anaka into the swamplands. It's at this point I think it's only right and proper to mention the true hero of the film. Amina's boyfriend has a dog, a scrappy little terrier called Peanuts, not Penis, as I misheard the first couple of times he garbled the dog's name. This dog has alerted everyone to Amina's abduction, tracked Kharis back to the hideaway, summoned reinforcements, and then, after Kharis slips away into the swamps, brings everyone again onto the trail. I feel robbed, frankly, that after this stellar performance of true heroics, we never get Peanuts versus the Mummy. Apart from Lon Chaney Jr. being able to up his game by being given something in the script to work with, and Ramsey Amos's undeniable beauty, the other standout portion of this film is the shocking ending. Shocking for its time and shocking now. Kharis carries Amina away, and as he departs we see her hands and her feet start to wither. Her hair, at first black, has been progressively gaining white streaks and is now a complete shock of white. By the time she and Kharis sink down into the swamplands, she has reverted into the mummified husked remains of Anaka, and the tiny waters close over both of them. The girl is not saved, and in a way Kharis is reunited with Anaka in the slumber of the dead. The end. We're in a very comfortable cycle by now of seeing various elements remixed and reused in each successive mummy movie. The curse placed on Kharis, the high priest's mission, the tanner leaves, Kharis carrying off some unsuspecting beauty, the priest flipping the script at the last minute leading to disaster. Enjoyment of these movies depends on how these elements are mixed, I suppose. Let me put it this way: if you're a fan of the ongoing Friday the 13th series and the Halloween sequels, then this template approach to sequel making will be extremely familiar to you. In a genuine sense, Kharis is the grandfather of the continuing adventures of Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. Here in this film, the elements mix together well, better I feel than they did in The Mummy's Tomb. A charismatic Carradine, a hypnotically beautiful Ramsey Aries, Chaney projecting through the bandages. It's a fun way to pass an hour in the company of one of Universal's classic monsters. Hey, what do I know, huh? Which is why I always try and round off these videos with alternate viewpoints from Internet Movie Database user reviewers. And the first one comes to us from Gazzo2 with a review that Gazzo2, some fair criticism I think, calls "This is the same as the one before and after. Shamble, shamble, choke, shamble, etc." That's the movie. And word is you don't really see much of Chaney Jr. as the mummy. Instead, you get his stuntman. Not that it matters, no shots of his face or anything pre-wrap, unlike the other movies. You have Turan Bey as the evil assistant priest, Zuko back for his regular slot as the aged priest, passing the baton, so to speak, all the usuals. The problem I have with these, the mummy shuffles, shuffles, shuffles. It's like being chased by a sloth. No one gets away. He always manages to get into someone's house, room and strangle them after being shot or whatever. No one chases after him. What gives? Get in a car. Drive off. And how does the mummy with one good arm carry a girl around with both? The professor, cops, students are all interchangeable. You saw a couple of them in the last movie. Some die. I would say the killings are more frequent than you'd expect in a 40s movie. It's okay time filler. You might like it if you like the others in the series. Oh, and the mummy is sucked into muck at the end with the girl. And whenever possible, we give the final word to channel favourite Jacob John Taylor 1 with a review called "Looking for Something Really Scary?" If you want to see something really scary, see this movie. This is scarier than The Mummy's Hand, and that is not easy to do. This is scarier than The Mummy's Tomb, and that is not easy to do. One movie that is scarier than this, The Mummy's Curse. This movie has a great storyline. It also has great acting. It also has great special effects. 5.8 is a good rating. But this is such a great movie, the 5.8 is underrating it. This is a 9. This is scarier than The Shining, and that is not easy to do. Reginald Labourque was a great filmmaker. This is one of his best movies. See it.